Hey everybody, Junior here, and let me tell you, ain't nothing worse than being stranded with a busted car. It's happened to all of us. You're driving along, minding your own business, and bam, something goes wrong. But don't you worry, because in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the top 10 car problems you're likely to face, and more importantly, I'm gonna show you how to fix them yourself and save a whole lot of money. We're talking dead batteries, flat tires, the whole 9 yards. So buckle up, grab your toolkit, and let's get these problems solved. Now, a dead battery is about as common as a mosquito in a swamp, especially if you're the type who forgets to turn off their headlights. You leave those lights on overnight and bam, you're stuck with a car that's deader than a doornail. But don't you fret. First things first, check your battery. See that white, powdery stuff on the terminals? That's corrosion. And it can drain your battery faster than a teenager drains their data plan. Clean it off with some baking soda and water. You'll be surprised what a difference it makes. Now if your battery's totally dead, you're gonna need a jump start. Grab those jumper cables, hook them up right, red to positive, black to negative, and give it a shot. If your battery keeps dying, it might be time for a new one. Ever been driving down the road and heard that dreaded thump 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 sound? That, my friend, is the sound of a flat tire ruining your day. Could be a nail, a screw, or just plain old wear and tear. First things first, get yourself to a safe spot off the road. Ain't nobody got time for a roadside accident. Now find your spare tire jack and lug wrench. They're usually tucked away in the trunk or under the floor mat. Position the jack under the car's frame near the flat tire and crank that baby up until the tire's off the ground. Next, grab that lug wrench and loosen those lug nuts. Lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, remember that. With the lug nuts loose, you can now remove the flat tire and put on the spare. Once the spare's on, tighten those lug nuts by hand as much as you can. Lower the car back down, and then give those lug nuts a final tighten with the wrench. Now get yourself to a tire shop ASAP and get that flat fixed or replaced. Now if your car's engine starts sounding like a popcorn machine, you got yourself an overheating problem. This is serious stuff, folks, and ignoring it can lead to some major engine damage. First things first, pull over to a safe spot and shut that engine off. Let it cool down for a good while before you even think about touching anything. Now, pop the hood and take a peek at your coolant reservoir. It's usually a translucent plastic tank with markings for full and low. If it's low, you might just have a simple leak. But before you go pouring in more coolant, make sure the engine is completely cool. Once the engine's cool, check for leaks in the hoses and the radiator. If you see any cracks or leaks, you'll need to replace those parts. But if the coolant level is fine and you're still overheating, you might have a bigger problem like a busted thermostat or a malfunctioning water pump. That's when you need to call in the big guns, aka a mechanic. Don't ignore overheating issues, they can lead to costly repairs. That pesky check engine light. It's like the cryptic message of the car world, leaving you wondering, what in tarnation is wrong now? Well, don't panic just yet. That check engine light could mean anything from a loose gas cap to a full-blown engine meltdown. The best way to decipher this automotive riddle is to get yourself an OBD2 scanner. These handy little gadgets plug into your car's computer system and read the error codes that are triggering the light. Once you've got the code, you can look it up online or in your car's manual to figure out what's going on. Sometimes it's a simple fix, like tightening your gas cap. Yep, you heard me right. A loose gas cap can actually trigger that check engine light. But if the code points to something more serious, like a faulty sensor or a problem with your emission system, then it's time to take a trip to your trusty mechanic. Don't ignore that light. It's there for a reason. Listen up, folks, because this is important. Your brakes are your best friends when it comes to staying safe on the road. If you're feeling any sponginess in the brake pedal, hearing any grinding or squealing noises when you brake, or if your car pulls to one side when you hit the brakes, you got yourself a problem that needs immediate attention. First things first, check your brake fluid. The reservoir is usually located near the back of the engine compartment and has markings for min and max. If it's low, top it off with the correct type of brake fluid. But keep in mind that low brake fluid is often a sign of a leak somewhere in the system, so keep an eye on it. Worn brake pads are another common culprit for brake problems. If you're hearing a squealing sound when you brake, chances are your brake pads are worn down and need to be replaced. Now, replacing brake pads ain't rocket science, but it does involve getting your hands dirty and knowing a thing or two about cars. If you're not comfortable tackling this job yourself, take your car to a mechanic. Trust me, when it comes to brakes, it's always better to be safe than sorry. There's nothing quite as frustrating as turning the key in your ignition and hearing nothing. But before you start panicking, take a deep breath and let's troubleshoot this thing. First, the obvious. Is the battery dead? We've all been there, leaving the lights on overnight or dealing with a battery that's simply reached the end of its life. If your battery's dead, try jump-starting it using those trusty jumper cables. Remember, red to positive, black to negative. If the jump start works, great. But keep in mind that you'll need to drive for a good while to recharge the battery, or you'll be back to square one in no time. If your car still won't start, the culprit could be a faulty starter. The starter is what gives your engine that initial spin to get it going, and when it goes bad, your car ain't going nowhere. You can try giving the starter a few taps with a hammer to see if that gets it going, but more often than not, you'll need to replace it altogether. Another possibility is a bad alternator. The alternator is what keeps your battery charged while you're driving, so if it's on the fritz, your battery won't be getting the juice it needs. You can test your alternator's output using a multimeter, but if you're not familiar with electrical work, it's best to leave this one to the professionals. Now the transmission is the unsung hero of your car, quietly shifting gears and making sure you get from point A to point B without a hitch. But when the transmission starts acting up, it can feel like your car is speaking a foreign language. One of the most common signs of transmission trouble is slipping gears. You're driving along and suddenly it feels like the engine is revving up, but the car isn't accelerating like it should. That, my friend, is a classic sign of a slipping transmission. Another telltale sign is rough shifting. If you're feeling a grinding or clunking sensation when you shift gears, or if the gears are hesitant to engage, you got yourself a problem. Now, transmission problems can be tricky, and often the best course of action is to take your car to a qualified mechanic who specializes in transmissions. They've got the knowledge and the tools to diagnose and repair these complex systems. However, there are a few things you can check yourself before you shell out big bucks at the mechanic. First, check your transmission fluid. Just like with your engine oil, the transmission fluid needs to be changed at regular intervals. Low transmission fluid or fluid that looks burnt or smells bad can indicate a problem. If you're unsure, consult a professional. Don't get left in the dark. The alternator is the heart of your car's electrical system. When it fails, it can leave you stranded. Dimming headlights are a clear sign. If they flicker, especially when idling, your alternator might be failing. Watch for a dashboard warning light. It could be a battery or charging system light. If it lights up, get your alternator checked. Testing requires a multimeter and some know-how. Measure voltage with the engine off and running. If voltage doesn't increase, your alternator is likely failing. Replacing it isn't too hard, but consider a professional if unsure. A little steam from your exhaust on a cold day is normal, but thick smoke means trouble. The color of the smoke reveals the issue. Blue smoke means burning oil. This could be worn piston rings or a leaky head gasket. White smoke indicates a coolant leak. Black smoke means too much fuel, excessive smoke. See a mechanic, don't ignore smoke, it's a cry for help. A car's fuel system is like its digestive system. It gets fuel from the tank to the engine to create power. Issues can cause poor fuel economy and starting problems. A common culprit is a clogged fuel filter. It removes impurities before fuel reaches the engine. Over time it can become clogged, restricting fuel flow. Replacing it is simple and inexpensive. Another issue is a failing fuel pump. It draws fuel from the tank to the engine. A bad pump can cause sputtering and stalling. Testing requires know-how and tools, so see a mechanic. Dirty fuel injectors can also cause issues. They spray fuel into engine cylinders and can clog over time. Use a good fuel injector cleaner to prevent problems. Keep your fuel system clean for a smooth ride. So there you have it, folks. The top 10 car problems you're likely to face, and how to tackle them head-on. Remember, a little bit of knowledge goes a long way when it comes to car maintenance. By knowing how to identify and address these common issues, you can save yourself a whole lot of time, money, and frustration. Now, I'm not saying you gotta be a master mechanic to keep your car running smoothly, but by being proactive, doing your research, and not being afraid to get your hands a little dirty, you can keep your car on the road and out of the repair shop. And hey, if you do run into a problem that's got you stumped, don't hesitate to reach out to a trusted mechanic. They're the experts after all. Until next time, this is Junior, reminding you to always check your fluids, drive safe, and never stop learning.